16th. Welcome to the Transportation and Environment Committee. We are picking up work on the FY26 budget, and there are 6 items on the agenda today: WSSC Water, Utilities, DGS Fleet, the Motor Pool Contribution and NDA, the Department of Transportation Parking Lot Districts, and a resolution to adopt the FY27 transportation fees, charges, and fares. But we will start with WSSC Water, which provides 2 million residents with water every single day. I know that we'll talk about some of the challenges that have been experienced over the last few months. And in response to that, WSSC is requesting a 5% volumetric and fixed fee increase, which we will learn more about. And I'll start with Mr. Levchenko.
Hi, good afternoon. WSSC Water does have a slide deck which we can go through, and then after that, items that I have in my packet that were not covered in the slide deck, we can get the most efficient way to get through this in a timely manner. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Powell to introduce the folks at the table.
Fantastic.
Good afternoon, Chair Glass and Council Members Stewart and Balcom. Thank you for having us here today. I'm joined by our CFO, Munetsi Masara, as well as Chief Engineer Alan Wong. I'm Keisha Powell, General Manager and CEO for WSSC Water. We also have other members of our finance team in the audience, and I'm here on behalf of our commissioners as well. I will go to the slide deck. Start with our formulated our budget. As we've said previously, we transition about 3 years ago to really developing our budget around specific outcomes and the vision for the utility, which is, we've said, sustained and transformative change. We're focused on primarily 4 pillars across our 8 strategic priorities, with infrastructure being one, our workplaces, the workforce, innovation and technology, as well as improving service delivery. Next. An anchor institution for that we, through the work that we are doing, the work that we control, meeting permits for our facilities, fixing water mains, investing in infrastructure, protecting $9 billion in infrastructure assets on behalf of our customers. We are, in many respects, protecting the economic output of the 2 counties. And we have funding in our budget to support customer assistance as well. And I have to just say that that is extremely important. Just this week, we were in Washington, D.C. for the water policy fly-in, and on discussions around the low-income household water assistance program, which was a federal pilot out of during the COVID time period that sunset last year. We've been told that that will not make it into the bill for an authorization for a permanent program. So that means there is no federal level assistance program. We do not have any state level assistance for water bills to help customers with water bills. So our customers will be solely reliant on the funding and programs that we can provide in partnership with others like Habitat for Humanity to provide the assistance necessary. Just the bottom line up front where our budget formulation is concerned, WSSC Water targeted a cut, a 5% cut below fiscal year 26 budget levels, approved budget levels. The fiscal year 2027 proposed budget was an 8% reduction. We were able to cut $27 million from what we would call the discretionary portion of the department budgets. Discretionary in this sense is costs that are not required of us from others, though many of those costs are costs that we cannot cut, like chemicals and other things, fuel, other things that are necessary for operations. We also focused on cost containment and sought efficiencies within our existing programs. We have no new programs that are included in the budget, and we did not include any new headcount requests. We've prioritized our capital budget programs to focus on system vulnerabilities and other projects that are regulatory requirements driven, and making sure that we can really focus on reliability and resilience in our systems. Next. The fiscal year 2027 proposed budget is $1.94 billion. We listed on this slide the operating sources of funds. Most of the funding for our budget, I believe it's about 93%, comes from our customers, and we don't, that's not something that we want to be the case, but it is something that is the case because there is not a lot of federal funding for capital. And I made the point this week to stakeholders in Washington, our congressional delegation in Washington, that even though we are focused on reauthorizing state revolving funds to support the capital program, there is nothing that supports the operating side of the budget, which is why the low-income household water assistance program is so important. We've also included here the operating uses of funds, the operating expenses. We also include debt service in the operating budget and pay-as-you-go funding for the capital program. And you can see on the blue side of the budget is our capital side, the debt, the state funding, pay-as-you-go for the capital sources of funds, the system development credits and other contributions, and then the specific uses. The lion's share of the funding goes towards WSSC Water's infrastructure capital projects. We do have some interjurisdictional investments that we're required to make. That includes funding that we pay toward DC Water's capital program for Blue Plains, and the adjustments for developer-funded projects. On the next slide, you'll see the specific budget drivers. We have an increase in debt service. This is what we pay towards money that we borrowed to pay for the capital program. The pay-as-you-go funds have increased. That's the cash in the operating side of the budget that supports the capital program. And the increase there is twofold. It allows us to limit the amount of debt that we take out so that in future years we're not having to pay more in debt. It also allows us to manage our financial metrics so that we can maintain the AAA credit rating, which is very important. Since we do borrow a lot of money, it's important that we keep our AAA rating to make sure that our borrowing costs remain as low as possible. We also increased our wages. We made a livable wage or living wage our minimum. We also carried forward, or will be carrying forward, newly negotiated collective bargaining agreement raises and other competitive wages that are critical to hiring and retaining staff. There were a lot of discussions about workforce development and the need to address the water workforce specifically. Federal funding continues to decline. Again, there's discussions around authorization of the SRF funds, but we noted in the budget that was presented by this administration the Trump administration that there is a suggestion of more than 70% decline in funding for water. So not looking too good on the federal side. And then we are faced with increased costs, fuel costs, chemical costs, sewage disposal, regional sewage disposal costs, employee health care costs, and other, just a rise in inflation and tariffs, material costs. Everything has gone up, and we recognize that, or we want our customers to recognize that we're faced with many of the same increases that they are. The pie charts at the bottom of this chart are really important to drive home the point that our budget is largely supported by ratepayer revenue, where other agencies may have more federal funding. And we see that quite a bit on the transportation side of things. More federal funds, state funds, and just more support in general for their budgets. Next. This is a snapshot of where the money goes. 41% or 41 cents on the dollar goes towards capital improvements. 33% goes towards operations and maintenance costs, and about 26% goes towards Team H2O, or the costs for our employees. I'll just our investment priorities before I turn it go through the capital program overview. Again, we have increased the funding for customer assistance programs by 20% over fiscal year 26. So we included $10.64 million in the budget. If we can go to the next slide. This shows the year-over-year change programs that we have included in the budget. So again, 10.6 million there. Next. These are the different financial. Have a new landing page on WSSC Water's webpage that takes you to and through the customer assistance programs that we offer. I do want to note that we established an emergency customer relief fund in partnership with United Way, which provides up to $750 in assistance with past due bills. Because we know, we have tried to provide as much as possible where we can to support those customers that are in need. We are finding that many customers are taking advantage of our the payment plan program through Promise, which has allowed customers to put their past due balances in a payment plan. And I've actually worked in the call center and taken calls. Customers are trying to keep up with their payment plans as well as their current bills, and we thank them for that. Next. Some of our priorities before is to make sure that we have a reliable electrical systems at our facilities. We have had some power interruption issues at the Potomac Water Treatment Plant. Even right now, we are working with PEPCO to make sure that the grid is reliable around that facility. They started some work last year. That work got interrupted with the winter weather, or just the winter season in general. We resumed that work a few weeks ago, and we're continuing to work with them. We also have to do some work internal to the plant to make sure that all of the components, like what you see here, are modernized. Next. This graphic just shows what would occur with a loss of power at Potomac, a complete loss of power. The Potomac plant serves most of our service area, so it would be an immediate impact and loss of water to both Montgomery and Prince George's County. Next. We're also focused on investing in our pipes. We had a 54-inch major break in Prince George's County last year, which had a significant impact to customers. We had to call for a boil water advisory. There were also many customers that were without water. We were able to get the system restored in less than a day, but it did take some time for the system to rebound. And, this next slide, it shows the 102-inch Anacostia sewer main, where we have seen evidence of corrosion. We have been planning a project to get this sewer work underway. There was an outreach meeting this week, which was well attended. So we'll be getting that project out for procurement here shortly. But the Potomac Interceptor was a very significant reminder that we have high consequence of failure infrastructure that really needs attention. And I'm happy to report that we have been working on those plans. We've also got to focus on emerging contaminants, PFAS. We also have other water quality concerns that we need to address. We sometimes get complaints about taste or odor or discolored water. And when we do flush the system, and we're proactive in addressing things from an operating standpoint, but we also need to make some investments. We have $6 million budgeted for a pilot to identify improved treatment technology for our water treatment plants. And the last priority listed or called out here in the slides is a focus on striving towards zero basement backups. We have the North Tacoma Park area where we're doing 5 miles of repair, rehabilitation, or replacement of sewer mains, including laterals. That's an area that has had some backups repeatedly, even prior to my tenure, and we're getting work underway there. There's also an area in Prince George's County that we're focused on in Lanham. Next. Before a slide that is not here, which is also a priority, is focusing on our water storage facilities. So we have several projects that are getting underway or to get underway. Bradley Hills, for instance, which has been the topic of discussion. We've been working with the community members to go back to the community with the details and incorporating their feedback. There are other water storage facilities that we also have to address. EPA did a visit to do a survey of our facilities not long ago, back at toward the end of last year. And so they, while we largely did well, they did specifically note that we have to get the investments on the water storage facilities underway. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wong.
Thank you, GM Powell. Glass, Councilmember Balcom, and Councilmember Stewart. For the record, my name is Alan Wong. I'm the Chief Engineer. This first slide, 11 cap million, and our 6-year FY budget totals $4.84 billion. There are 219 projects that are in flight, so to speak, $231 million. And projects that will be launching this fiscal year are additional 88, which total $202 million. This next slide shows the proposed FY27 vs. FY26 adopted CIP by our 8 program areas. So if you look down the left-hand side, you'll see our 8 areas: water distribution, innovation and investment priorities, the interjurisdictional agreements, wastewater collection, mixed use and other capital programs, water resource recovery facilities, water treatment and storage, and general facilities, including our support center, depots, and laboratory. So the blue bars on this graph green bars are a FY26 adopted budget. So you can see that there are some program areas that are increasing and some that are decreasing. So this next slide the water distribution, the three at the top are the three programs that we have reduced our budget. The water distribution program has been reduced by 8%. And that's mainly due to the fact that we're optimizing our water reconstruction program. We're firming up our delivery process, and we're able to get more work done at a faster pace. The mixed-use program, that includes the work that we were doing for I-495, I-270. That work is just about closing out. So we have a significant increase there of 35%. I'm going to just put these numbers in front of me, okay, so I can read them. Yes, and then the other program that is coming down is the water treatment and storage program, and that's a 30% reduction. And the main driver for that is the fact that our Potomac plant treatment plant consent decree is winding down this year. We have gotten a brief time extension from NDE, but we don't expect to spend any more capital than is budgeted. So we're going to be looking at a 30% reduction in that category. The next 5 programs we're seeing increases. The innovation and investment priorities includes the main driver there is the meter infrastructure upgrade. And you've heard and read a lot about the automated metering program, and we just got approval to move that forward from our council. So that's going to be a major uptick in terms of expenditures. The interjurisdictional agreements, the main driver for that increase is the Blue Plains interjurisdictional agreement. And we have some new numbers that have been estimated for the additional cost as a result of the Potomac Interceptor situation. And so we'll be able to report more on that very shortly. On the general facilities side, the main driver for that increase is that we have some significant work to do on our support center. And in fact, the general manager is physically part of that. She's already moved from the 12th floor, and her new headquarters are down in the basement, I guess you'd call it, right? Yes. The water resource recovery program, that's the plants that convert our wastewater to reclaimed water, and that program is increasing by 72%. And finally, on the upside are the water collection assets, which are mainly our sewer system, and we're focusing more heavily on I&I infiltration and reducing that flow into our system. And the cost of treating that is one issue, but the other concern we have is the continued, let's say, deterioration of our sewer system, and we're trying to get ahead of that. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to our Chief Financial Officer, Minetsi.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Glass, Council Members Balcom and Stewart. For the record, Minetsi Musara, Chief Financial Officer. Here we have additional costs received from DC Water that we did not include in our proposed budget due to the revised amounts being received because DC Water is on its October through September fiscal year, so the timing is a little bit off. So we received a $1.2 million increase in annual debt service related to accelerated projects in Blue Plains capital spending, as well as a $2.2 million increase in regional sewage disposal costs from updated projections as well. So just to put it into perspective, a 1% reduction in our rate enhancement equates to $10.5 million in operating budget, or $268.5 million in capital budget deferments. So when we looked at this $3.4 million, which is an operating effect, budget impact, we said that it'll be about $89.8 million in capital that will need to be deferred, but we're still looking at the process to figure out what will happen for us to really be able to not just absorb it, with no pain, but we have to do addition by subtraction. So whatever we reduce, we'll have to make sure we come up with the funding to pay for this additional $3.4 million. For our long-term financial plan, our assumptions for the base case of 5% and the remaining 5 years are presented here. As noted, in addition to just the DC Water $3.4 million mentioned in the last slide, we also have increased operating costs in natural gas, electricity, diesel, and chemicals arising from the current events in Iran. And all these costs, again, will need to be addressed further by departments tightening the belts in other areas and deferring planned activities and ensuring that we try to maintain our same service level delivery. Collaborating with the counties as we formulated the investment needs while keeping a keen eye towards affordability concerns. Non-rate revenue options continue to be explored. External funding from federal and state sources are being reduced, as the General Manager mentioned. So other opportunities in monetizing various activities, increasing system development charge rates, and collecting adequate miscellaneous fees to cover costs are key. Our cost control measures in debt management remain strong, and we seek to maintain sufficient cash on hand. As it relates to the revenue enhancement recommendation, as part of the spending affordability process, the Commission submitted and presented a 6% base case revenue enhancement with a 7% alternate scenario. The Montgomery County Executive supported an up to 7% revenue enhancement, and the Montgomery County Council passed a resolution supporting a 6% revenue enhancement. Prince George's County Council passed a resolution supporting a 5% revenue enhancement, which was the same as what the Prince George's County Executive supported. The FY 2027 preliminary proposed budget, is supported by a 6% enhancement. It is comprised of a 5% average water and sewer volumetric and fixed fee rate, supplemented by 1% from non-rate revenue and a temporary rate stabilization fund to limit the impact on customers. As the General Manager mentioned, any new headcount, and it includes priority capital budget programs to maximize outcomes and the use of the available funding. Here we have the uses and sources of the FY27 $1.194 billion operating budget by major category, with increases and decreases in categories between FY25, 26, and 27, illustrated on the graphs on the right-hand side of the slide. And this slide here has the uses and sources of the FY27 capital budget by major category. It's funded primarily by bonds and pay-go to support the investment needs in our system. The impact of the revenue enhancement on our customer bills is displayed here. This table highlights the bill impacts to an average 3-person household with a 3/4 inch meter. The 5% average water and sewer volumetric and fixed fee rate will result in a monthly change of $4.92, a quarterly change of $14.75, and an annual change of $59. Over the last 26 years, our cumulative bill impact has been beyond that of our regional peers, and the amount only reached the point of being higher than the CPI index in 2025, and that's illustrated by the blue line crossing over where we are. With that, it concludes our presentation. However, before we go to questions, we $1 in financial assistance are provided to our neighbors, and then some of the rising costs went up by 4%, regional sewage disposal 7%, heat, light, and power 9%, health insurance 10%. And then again, the cost of gas has gone up, and this slide is about 2 weeks old, and it's gone up further since things have happened. Same thing with electricity, and then same thing with diesel. So with that, we're available for any questions, and thank you for your support and time.
Presentation. Appreciate all the details, and want to acknowledge that even with an increased budget like this, there are no additional personnel, and so it is the recognizing that other issues and other areas are increasing, like regional sewage disposal costs and so forth. Mr. Levchenko, I'll turn it back over to you to provide any highlights or additional thoughts.
Yeah, I was just making notes as they were talking which areas we did cover. I did want to reemphasize a couple things that you did here. First, we're talking about a 5% rate increase, and that's a result of a lot of work that both councils asked WSSC Water to do, which was to really look inside their base and see what they could reallocate. Because we were looking at a significantly higher rate increase in FY27 in the earlier planning efforts. And we talked about this a little bit in the spending control limits process last fall. So that's good news from the county's perspective that they were able to achieve what we had asked them to do. There are a few unbudgeted costs in their proposed budget that you heard about, in DC water related costs, which they will be working to try to absorb as they sort of go through that process. The other thing you did hear was they have some one-time use of fund balance and some unusually high interest income that they're able to lean on in FY27, but that does mean they will face that. Those probably will not be recurring in 28, so we will have a little more pressure on 28 from that. But all told, this is all pretty good news budgetarily from where we thought we were a year ago, or even 2 years ago, with regard to the budget. And the long-range financial plan that was up on the screen for a minute does note higher rate increases in the out years. Those are the same as were shown last fall and very similar to what was in last May's long-range plan assumptions when the budget was approved. So what they were able to do was reduce the rate for 27, and we'll see what happens in 28 going forward. A lot of uncertainty, especially you heard some of the cost drivers, especially on the heat, light, and power side, but also a lot of other things that are not completely in their control, like chemical costs, and of course DC water. We'll be hearing more about the Potomac Interceptor, short-term repair costs, as well as longer-term changes they may make in that project going forward, and those changes will also need to be absorbed by WSSC Water. I did want to note just briefly regarding the schedule. The Prince George's Council has been briefed on, got a similar briefing to what you just got. They have not moved forward with any recommendations at this time, but we do expect their council to act about the same, or do preliminary actions about the same time as ours, which would be the first week in May. We have preliminarily scheduled a Monday meeting. I think they're meeting on that Tuesday. And then the following Thursday, we have the bi-county meeting where we need to resolve WSSC water issues, as well as park and planning joint cost issues, as well as the Washington Suburban Transit Commission. So we'll talk more about that later as that gets closer. The other things I did want to mention, there was some discussion about rate increase history and expenditure history, and I did include some updated charts in my packet. I'm not going to go into that detail now, but first you did see that from a water and sewer industry perspective, WSSC water rates are on the lower end in terms of historic rate increases over time, is with similar utilities. But also just comparing them to themselves. And what my charts do is they show the expenditure increase and the rate increase. And the rate increases have been going up significantly faster than expenditures. And that's related to the fact that water consumption in the water and sewer district is flat. And given that we've had significant population growth in the last 20 years, what that means is that per capita water usage is down significantly. And accessible base was flat for 20 years. Where would we be financially if that was the case? So that's it was a daunting issue over the past 20 years to deal with that.
Well, Mr. Lutsenko, I appreciate you highlighting all of that. And one additional question, and I know I asked it at the CIP, but since you've brought more information about the Potomac Interceptor, can you share what, now that a few weeks have passed, what is the total cost that WSSC and clearly our ratepayers will be asked to pay for the remediation?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair Glass. Water that their estimates, which were originally around $20 million, I quote, is now $59 million.
5.9?
Yes. Did I say that right? Okay. They indicated that they received $5 million in funding support from the emergency that was declared, that they will be seeking additional funding through the emergency. However, we noted that DC Water does not have a share in the cost. The district does not have a share in the cost of this work. It is Maryland and Virginia utilities and jurisdictions that contribute flows to the Potomac Interceptor. So WSSC Water has a 30.9% share of the costs, and the city of Rockville has a almost 16% share of our allocation.
So the city of Rockville has a 16% of WSSC's
Water share.
30%.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Got it.
we projected CFO Massara a little less than 1%.
Yes. That is, it came to about 0.06%.
And that and the top line numbers that you had shared in the beginning of the presentation, that's going to be assumed to be paid in this budget?
The emergency would be in fiscal year 2027. We're expecting to receive that as part of the cost that they send us. The planned projects, which there were 3 already that have been, the cost for those planned projects have gone up, and those are budgeted over multiple years. So we can provide the breakdown of those projects as well.
So will we be getting an amended CIP to reflect that as well?
Those, we will have to make sure that those are included in an amendment, because we received costs after we made the last change.
Sure. I know that we're having these conversations in real time, and even though we had the CIP, when we had the CIP discussion, the situation was resolved, right? And so there was no more leakage, but we know that it wasn't entirely fixed.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Very good. Colleagues?
Don't believe that we've received costs related to mitigation measures, which continues to be an ongoing discussion, nor have we received a report or overview of what that will entail.
And who would you expect to get that from?
That would be coming from DC Water. Yeah.
They are leading this effort.
Yes.
If not paying for it, they're leading it.
That is right.
Okay. Councilman Balcom.
Thank you. That was one of my questions, but I just wanted to clarify. So the money that we need to transfer, is it in the budget that we just looked at, or is it an additional? Will it be additional cost?
We did not have the emergency budgeted, of course, because that happened January 19th. The planned projects we did have incorporated in the budget. However, in January, no, I'm sorry, February, after the emergency, we had a discussion with DC Water. At that time, they communicated to us new costs, increased costs for those projects. So that was about February 3rd. Yeah.
So how will this change the rate increase when all the numbers are known?
It will more than likely impact fiscal year 28
Okay.
and beyond.
So we'll look at it when we start.
In terms of, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I just also wanted to turn this off. I'm looking at myself. So looking at the slide 24, the projected increases, and they go up quite a lot, and we've known that, we understand that, but my concern is that, we negotiate with Prince George's about what this percentage is going to be, and I'm concerned about whether that's an over-optimistic look at what we're going to be able to come into agreement with. Also, we agreed to 6%, 5%, and you settled on the 5%, right?
Right.
And so in 24, slide 24, it goes up to like 7.5%, some percent.
Well, it's 8.2% in 28, and then it starts to decline a bit after that. Now, remember, this does not include some of the new costs you just heard about.
Right.
This is assuming what they knew at the time when they developed this plan. Certainly that also doesn't take into account, for instance, the cost savings they found last fall to help with the 27 rate increase. But you're right, every year the rates are subject to approval by both councils, and if the past is any precedent, the Prince George's Council has tended to really press for lower rates, even when the rates are lower than they were expected to be. So we expect that will be an ongoing discussion, and this council and that council will ultimately have to come to some conclusion this year. We can't commit future councils to rate increases, so it's an annual discussion.
Yeah, so I'm just concerned about putting out the plan, the long-term financial plan, and whether those increases, whether we're actually going to come into agreement to have an 8% increase. So I'm concerned about that. Doesn't impact 2027, other than we came to a 6%. I thought that was the right amount. So what's going to happen is the rate increase next year is going to be almost twice as the rate increase this year, and I think that I'm concerned about that. So as I said, it doesn't impact 27, and then so I think that when you get the numbers for the Potomac Interceptor transfer, I think it's really important to update what 2028 is going to look like from a rate increase perspective, because already it's pretty high compared to recent past.
Thank you for that input. And there are pressures when we met during spending affordability. We talked about the pressure of healthcare costs going up. And then, between then and now, we have had, the conflict in Iran that has impacted costs. We are seeing increased costs, electric costs because of, everything that's happening there. So fortunately, we initiated an energy transition 6 years ago. Were it not for that and work that we continue to do, which still requires some level of investment, the cost would be much higher for heat, light, and power. So we continue to try to identify ways to reduce operating costs, but we are right now working on, for a number of things, what investments we need to make to further reduce operating costs. As well as just reducing operating costs. Are there things that we just need to not do? What I shared with the Prince George's County Council Committee last week was the impacts of cuts for fiscal year 2027. Any further cuts, the options are, and it really is, we really cannot find it in operating. The cuts that we made, among the cuts that we made, many of those, and we provided that information, Mr. Levchenko, many of those were one time. They are not sustainable cuts. And, so we're looking at capital deferral, and we would have to defer or cut as much as $263 million in capital to achieve a 1% reduction. Those are cuts we really cannot afford to make. We're talking about projects that have been deferred, and they're very concerned about deferring any more capital work from all utilities, water utilities. Sure. That has become a significant focus as part of our surveillance and our rating.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I'm very concerned about cuts in capital cost, only because we know when something bad happens, it's big, right? And so let's hope we can not do that.
Councilmember Malcolm, if I could also say that impact us. This week, my operations team reached out to me and said, we just got a notice that we can no longer take our, grit from the treatment plants to the local landfill. So now we have to look at hauling to Virginia. Mm. The increased fuel costs, travel costs for now hauling out of state, that those things come up, and we've got to immediately figure out now how are we going to pay more for this service. Right. So those are the things that, and then, chemical costs, we have not as much control over either. We have to use the chemicals. We do not want to have unsafe drinking water. We've got to make sure that we're covering costs.
So I appreciate that. We need safe, reliable water, and we know that. So just lastly, the meter upgrades, I'm so excited about that project. And I look forward to, once it's established and we have data, the 2 points would be that I'd be interested in is the amount of leaks that are found and when they're found. I think that's important. And also whether there's a decrease in defaults or late payments, because I think that's really going to help with family budgeting.
Thank you for that. We're excited about it too, and we did provide an update memorandum to the council president this week, but we will make sure that that is sent to the committee. Okay. So there are some examples. One of the schools in Montgomery County, in fact, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with another school that had an ongoing leak for, I think, 2 to 3 years that they were not able to identify. We installed the AMI meter, and they were able to pinpoint the leak finally. Their bill was astronomical, and they kept saying it just can't be, it can't be, it can't be, and it was. And so I'm glad you raised that particular program, because we are actively pursuing opportunities to get funding for that as well. So that will help with future years, hopefully.
Great, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Balcom. And Madam General Manager, I appreciate you mentioning the regional sewage disposal because that was on my list, the 7.2%. Perhaps you want to join us next week when we talk about our own trash collection here. I suggest you not join us. Might be a messy conversation. But thank you. But appreciate you elaborating on that. Councilmember Stewart.
Great, thank you. I just want to add to what Council Vice President Balcom said, and thank you to her for raising those issues. I think part of thinking about, well, first let's say we're glad to see the rate this year and that it looks like we are in alignment with our colleagues in Prince George's. We like to be in that place, hopefully unlike where we have sometimes been in the past. So let's hope we stay there. And looking forward, I think one of the things that you mentioned early on regarding the federal assistance for households and how that assistance is in jeopardy and going away, it's, I think, part of this whole conversation that we have to think about as well. Because if we're increasing rates and we're seeing more and more the clawback from federal assistance programs, that adds to the burden of our residents. And as we think about the Potomac intercept and the regional impact that had and what this is going to do across our region to our residents as we look at how we're going to afford the projects moving forward. Really thinking about this as a regional project and also thinking about it as regional advocacy. So I know you're working with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments and thinking about how we can, as an entire region, think about those federal assistance programs and working together because it's looking to the future. There's going to be a lot that we're going to have to undertake, and we can't focus on funding those projects. And then, I agree with Council Vice President Balcom. I'm very afraid of any deferment in our own capital projects here because we know what happens when we defer projects. And you showed North Tacoma, which I am fully aware of and have been living through for many years. And when we don't address problems, they don't go away. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for all of that work.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Could I just make one point of clarification for the record? The local landfill is not in Montgomery County, so I just want to say that.
Aware of that, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Conversation, Mr. Lovchenko. So colleagues in Prince George's did the committee deferred?
No, they typically have a briefing first and information sort of requests back and forth. So WSSC Water can speak to this, but they'll be going back, I think, to is it the Committee of the Whole?
So, Chair Glass, the committee received the recommendation from the staff, which was the 5%. And then from there, I believe, on the of May, they'll then take it to the committee recommendation.
Thank you. It seems that the back and forth has, the volleying has gotten more engaged, I guess, over the years. And we have typically made the first decision, but then have had to spend a lot of time on our phones and corresponding with our colleagues. So I'm cognizant of that and don't want to get ahead of our skis here per se, but what I will say is I'm comfortable with the presentation, recognizing what the need is, and want to again express my appreciation for you and the commissioners for putting a budget together that does not increase the FTEs but hones in on the core functions and making sure that our water is clean and safe. So I don't know if anyone wants a motion. I'll defer as to what we want to do.
Just one other point that we haven't brought up yet. Another element in the recommendation, which is approved annually, discuss that at the bi-county meeting as well. WSSC Water is recommending an increase in that. We talked about it briefly during the CIP because the Assisted Development Fund is still going negative late in the 6-year period. So there still is a imbalance between the revenues coming in for it and the expenditures going out. So they did recommend a 2.4% increase in the charge. Staff concurs with that. Once again, we have to reassess it each year. There are strategies if they do have a negative issue, they can issue debt through that fund in order to pay for expenditures, but we'd rather not end up there. So I think it's better to try to gradually increase the rates if we keep seeing these negative balances in the latter term of the 6-year period. So that is also part of the package today and would be preliminarily supported by the council at the same time as the budget and then be discussed at the bi-county meeting.
Very good. You want to make a motion?
Oh, yeah, I think Councilman, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and yes, 1 and 2.
There we go. I'll join in that. So that is unanimous. That will adopt WSSU recommendation for their FY27 budget.
Thank you so much. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank Okay, next item on our agenda is the utilities NDA. Director Dice and team. For FY27, the county executive is recommending an increase of $633,618, representing a 1.5% increase from the FY26 approved operating budget for the utilities NDA. Mr. Mia, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Do you want to walk us through the packet?
Sure. Yes, as noted, it's a relatively minor increase, especially compared to years past. Within that net increase, there is a $2.1 million increase for lease payments relating to the design and build out of resiliency hubs and microgrids throughout the county. This is part of a multi-year lease program, so the increase for FY27 is $2.1 million. The base budget would be, for 27, total budget for microgrids would be about $11 million. There is a $840,000 increase for utility commodity cost. Most of that is electricity, with some for gas and sewer. The executive is recommending a $61,000 for utility charges relating to the new MCPS bus depot lease sites on East Goody. That was based on some outdated assumptions. The true cost is closer to $100,000. It assumes a 12-month lease, whereas the executive is recommended assume a 7-month lease of charge, 7 months worth of charges for the lease. There's a net decrease of $186,000 in solid waste charges in the 26 approved budget. The amount for solid waste charges was overstated due to the last minute or the later reduction in solid waste charges. So that is resulting in a net decrease for 27 to correct for that overcharge in this year's budget. And finally, there's a $2.1 million shift of electricity charges to the Fleet Management Internal Service Fund, which we'll discuss as item number 4. That reflects a shift of quote-unquote fuel for electric buses to the fleet fund from the utilities to a net increase of $633,000. So I'll stop there. Let's see if there's any specific questions or
Sure.
comments.
Thank you for that. Welcome, Director Dice and team. I want to hone in on the bus depot because it was a topic of conversation earlier this week with regard to MCPS. I know that this is about utility, but I think for purposes of this conversation, talking about the long range needs here, we have not gotten an update since I guess we talked about the lease and the opportunity that you and your team were able to spot and clearly sign. And so can you provide us some more details? And I see Mr.
Sure.
Ossoff is
David
here.
Dice, Director, Department of General Services. I'm going to kick it off and then hand it over to Deputy Director Greg Ossent, who's intimately, perhaps more than he desires to be, acquainted with this particular project. But as an overall perspective, the new MCPS depot off of Goody and Dover at that location will replace the maintenance operation currently located off of Crabs Branch Way on the east side of Crabs Branch as a step forward in the ultimate fulfillment and realization of the master plan to convert that east side to residential and commercial residential development in support of what has already taken place on the west side. It does not address all of the buses that are parked currently at the Shady Grove site, but will accommodate about 100 to 150 of those buses. The remaining buses will have to stay at their current location, albeit in a reduced form and pushed, if you will, to the east end of that site in a parking area that's also included in our capital improvement program, and have access to and from that parking area off of the Metro Station access road, which the county is obtaining from WMATA, and buses will no longer have to enter and exit ultimately from that site onto Crabs Branch Way, which has been a desire and expectation of the community for years. But the discussion held earlier involved a proposed solution by schools to relocate those buses to a couple of unused school sites in the county. And we were aware and have worked with MCPS on that, notwithstanding the need to vet this project like we do all projects. Of course, we have to have a project in order to vet it and engage community and seek input and come up with optimal solutions. The ultimate plan is to still have buses parked there, but to put ride-on buses in that area in order to facilitate the expanding ride-on system and to address those as battery electric or hydrogen electric fueled buses operating off that site, but again, accessing off of the Metro access way and not into and through communities. My comment to the community is our ultimate goal is the only time buses, school or ride-on buses would be traveling through their neighborhoods is if they're picking up or dropping off people, not going to. The first step in the realization of all of that is the relocation of the current MCPS maintenance depot. That will go to the Goody site, and that project is well underway. And we anticipate, Mr. Ossent can give us the schedule, but we anticipate the realization of that as we had originally scheduled, maybe a little bit sooner. MCPS has been very cooperative with us in coming up with layouts and plans. We think it's going to be a great site for them and one that will last them well into the future. It will be my personal and professional delight to see the existing depot off of Crabs Branch razed to the ground. But we are also working with Maryland State Department of Environment about all the mitigation that will have to be required as part of that too. So it's perhaps a longer answer to your question, but it does update you on where we're at. And I'll ask Mr. Ossent to give us definitive schedules.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Greg Ossent, Department of General Services. As Mr. Dice mentioned, there are a lot of moving parts with this project, and we discussed as it relates to the leases NDA this morning. But as it relates to 861 Goody specifically, that will be the maintenance depot. You'll recall last year, and actually the better part of 2026, calendar 2026, was spent negotiating with the landlord for this particular location. This is the former Amazon warehouse and distribution hub, and before that it was a purpose-built Coca-Cola distribution facility. It's at the corner of Goody and Dover, as David mentioned. So you'll recall that we came in with some last-minute supplementals and appropriation requests so that we could secure the lease. And as David mentioned, securing the site is our first and foremost. Without the site, we have no project design. We were able to execute the lease in November of 2025 and immediately went into the design phase. Design is nearly complete. We are scheduled to have a pre-submission meeting with the community next week or the week after. It's later this month. That's the pre-submission for the mandatory referral. As you, I'm sure you know that as part of our mandatory referral process, we will attempt through the design and what we've learned and try to address and illustrate all of the issues that are typically discussed with the community. For example, transportation and traffic is always a hot one, as well as the use. And as David mentioned, this is not for parking and storage of buses. There will be parking and storage facilities there, but the primary parking and storage will remain at Crabs Branch. The lease, as I indicated, the lease commencement was November of 2025. We received quite a bit of rent abatement, so our rent commencement won't occur until August of this year. And so you see an abbreviated leases NDA for not quite a full year of lease payments for the space. And that is commensurate with what Mr. Mia mentioned as it relates to the utilities. We have been obviously operating the facility since November. We're paying the utilities out of the current fiscal year, but since it's a vacant building and we're not heating and cooling it as you would expect with an occupied building, we're going to be able to manage that. However, once we pull permits and start construction this summer, it will be a fully occupied building, and therefore, hence the utility costs. Construction is expected to last about a year, and our target is to begin the transition or migration of the maintenance depot from Crabs Branch to Goody in August of next summer. Trying to hit that window right before MCPS gets incredibly busy with the start of the school year. And obviously that is a very narrow window because prior to the start of the school year, they're training drivers and the like. And so this facility will help with those training facilities, but it's a pretty narrow window. So we're working, as David mentioned, in close coordination with MCPS staff, and we'll continue to do so throughout the design and construction phases, all towards an opening in August, September of next year.
Very exciting update. I appreciate it. I know people have been following, and Director Dice, as you noted, this is a capstone for you and your department. Our inboxes will be a lot lighter as well, and very much want to extend my appreciation to you and your eagle-eyed team that when you saw this property become available, you jumped to it. I remember asking for that supplemental, and I'm glad it's moving forward. So thank you. One other question I have before opening it up for colleagues: the increase in anticipated utility costs. We've been having lots of conversations about rising utility rates. We had a committee session a few months ago with our utility companies and the Maryland People's Council talking about why utility rates are increasing. And we were told very matter-of-factly that it is because of increased demand on the grid by data centers in Virginia and in Ohio and within the region. What has the increase in cost been to Montgomery County government and our taxpayers because of those increased costs?
Let me answer that by framing it in the context of all the initiatives we have across DGS in the county to conserve energy and be smart about our energy use. As are well aware, county has not ceased to expand its facilities, owned or leased, to provide services to residents. At the same time as the expanding of our capital infrastructure, we're also implementing through our Office of Energy Services, our Department of Building and Construction, all the planning and designing we do, implementing sound environmental strategies with current buildings and future buildings, and retrograding lighting, improving building envelopes, and also becoming very aggressive in our utility rate negotiations, and probably chiefly the introduction of green energy sources, photovoltaic, microgrids, and the like. So while our capital inventory has increased, our unit cost per square foot to heat and cool buildings has decreased. And I think that that's significant. The rates that we pay the commodity rates that we pay to Pepco are negotiated rates, and certainly the rates that we're paying our partners through our power purchase agreements and the development of resilient microgrids is more than half, 56, than the commercial rates, and those rates are fixed well into the future with an allowance of a 2% annual increase in price. Inflationary price still remains more than half of the commercial commodity rates. So we've tried to approach energy rates and commodity payments with the future in mind, not just as most of us private consumers were thrown into the slings and arrows of annual increases and variations. That is not the case with Montgomery County's energy profile, that we are decreasing the rates that we pay. Now, regarding any potential increase in those rates, it's uncertain to the extent that those will impact us, because we are in fact about ready to renegotiate rates and seek energy contracts, again fixing those rates into the future, not just an annual basis. So it's undetermined exactly what that impact will be, but it will certainly be less than what is the common commercial commodity rate, and we've tried to anticipate that in our planning, and continue to be aggressive about lowering our environmental energy consumption footprint and save money that way as well. So that's sort of a broad answer. Hope that addressed your question.
I appreciate the environmental remediation and all of the alternative forms of energy that have been invested in every aspect of county government and on every facility that's feasible. Absolutely. Still, there is electricity that needs to be used.
Absolutely.
Still costs are increasing, thus the reason for $839,000.
Absolutely, it's unavoidable. There's increases that occur. I guess we're talking about the delta between what will occur and what could otherwise occur.
Well, let me rephrase the question.
Okay.
Instead of, you addressed it from a perspective that the increase was because of increased usage. Mm-hmm. I'm asking it about increased is cost budget increase.
I'm going to change places. Yes, this is Chris Weatherly, who is my energy guru, staff of our Office of Energy and Supply. With trepidation, I'm going to ask him to answer your question.
And energy guru is,
and try and tell him to try and
climate
keep it,
czar, the energy guru.
Mr. Weatherly.
Thank you, Director. So, the line items. So what I'm going to speak to is what I like to refer to as really the big three. The biggest one by far is electricity. The second is natural gas, and then the third is water. Now, of those three, electricity comprises roughly 70% plus of the entire NDA utility budget. Okay. So if you were to get an idea on a commodity basis, and electricity is different based on the tariff. Okay. So if we look at the electric rates on the table in page 5 of the the electricity rates for electric grid compared to electric solar, that's what Director Dice referenced, and then the rates for electric streetlights and traffic signals vary significantly. I don't want to call out Pepco here, but I will say that when we upgraded the lights for the streetlights many years ago, we received a $4.5 million grant and incentives for that effort. But as someone from Pepco said, you can't beat the house. And sure enough, they raised their rates. So we can show a significant reduction since the lighting project going back to fiscal year 16. However, the electric rates, the tariff for electric streetlights has increased almost triple since then. And that's tough to compete against. So as we, so to speak, try to bail the boat and use less on the usage side with electricity, the electric rates keep going up. And just to mention a couple strategies that we're trying to do, when we did energy performance contracting years ago, using this building as example, we've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions and energy use by 40%, which is a fantastic effort. And that was a lot of savings. But again, those savings get lost when the utility rates increase. I hope I answered the question.
I think the short of it is costs are going to go up despite our best efforts to contain costs. I don't have a specific number on what that is.
I'll follow up with you after. I
That'd be
appreciate
great.
the explanation and the thoughtful approach in which we're undertaking this and keeping the lights on literally and figuratively. Councilmember Stewart?
No, you answered all my questions. That was exactly.
She was taking
No, I was taking a lot-
furious
yes,
notes, so I thought
really
that she.
appreciate
I don't think
the,
I've ever done that before.
Yeah, no. First time for everything.
You're good? No.
Thank you. So I just wanted to talk about the reconciliation list for a minute. So we've had this similar discussion, I think on Monday, about what really is discretionary and what isn't. And I think that this is one of those, this is a similar situation in that. So for I'm on page 7, the resiliency hub and microgrid payments, that's contractually obligated.
That is correct.
Right. So I think that has to be noted, that this is not discretionary. And so when we look at however it's going to be placed on the reconciliation list, I don't know if there are a lot of things like this,
It would be an
right?
asterisk, yeah.
And so asterisk,
yes.
and if we can get it in a separate category, right? Because I just think it's so important that we identify those. Similarly with the utilities for the bus depot, we can, if that's not if we don't approve it, then we don't have electricity in the bus depot, right?
If I may, in reference a yet to be discussed item in today's agenda, the same thing applies to hydrogen. We need to think of hydrogen just like we think of gasoline and diesel.
Yeah. So I just wanted to call that out because we had the same conversation on Monday, and this fits the book. It's the same thing. So
Before we leave the subject, if I can just brag on Montgomery County a little bit. I mean, later this month, we're going to be doing a ribbon cutting on the second and largest resilient microgrid fleet maintenance depot in the United States of America. That's incredible. But we do this through our power purchase agreements, and to not have those robs us of the opportunity for these and future advancements.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, of course.
Come back. So thank you, Council Vice President Balcom. I missed that the resiliency hubs were on the reconciliation list. And can we just double check? Because I'm pretty sure the guidance was if it is, given that we just did leases this morning, if we follow the same practice we had this morning from GO, the resiliency hubs and microgrids shouldn't be on here, in my estimation, I think. So,
You can double check. Yeah.
We concur with that.
Right, okay.
Is there-
No, I didn't catch it, and I apologize,
we
but
done
I'm
here?
thinking of how we went through Go this morning. Anything agreement, our leases, affiliation.
Yeah.
So I didn't catch
I will
that.
note that similar item came up 2 years ago and it was placed on rec list, and that's
Okay.
because the leases were technically subject to appropriation. However, I agree that this is an ongoing effort and it should be treated differently.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
We are all in agreement there, so without objection and with an asterisk.
Thank you.
Thank you, DGS. And some of you will stay, some of you will play musical chairs. Item number 3 in the Department of General Services is fleet management, and that is our third item. The county executive recommends a decrease in funding of 1.33% from the FY26 approved operating budget for fleet management services budget. The Division of Fleet Management Services is part of DGS and includes administrative automotive services, business support services, heavy equipment services, operational management, public safety, automotive services, and transit equipment services. Mr. Maya.
Thank you for that introduction. So just a reminder, housekeeping-wise, this is an internal service fund. The budget, as it's set, is recouped through the form of revenues in the form of chargebacks to other funds and departments. For FY27, approximately 93% of the chargebacks would hit tax-supported funds. So any decrease in this budget, you can assume 93% more or less would be realized in tax-supported departments and funds. There is only one new item that would be recommended for placement on the rec list. This is $742,000 for purchasing hydrogen fuel to power our new hydrogen fuel cell powered buses for ride-on the Veers Mill corridor. The buses themselves will be delivered, I believe, next month or very soon. And however, the actual corridor itself, including the stations and the hydrogen fueling equipment, have been delayed. So what this would do is it would purchase fuel from a third party to allow a ride-on to essentially do some limited deployment testing of the buses on that corridor to allow themselves to become familiar, to iron out any issues that do arise. If it's not funded, those buses would essentially, be placed in a parking lot until the rest of the corridor was set up and fully funded. Or alternatively, Fleet could try to absorb the cost and purchase the fuel and do some testing that way. So it is being placed on the rec list as it is a new item. There is that risk if it's not funded. The other noteworthy item I just want to point out is the fuel cost reduction. The executive is recommending a reduction of $3 million in fuel costs. It is really a net decrease of $1 million because of the $2 million shift in electric fuel from the utilities NDA. So it's a $1 million reduction in the fuel budget. This was, of course, developed before the current war in the Middle East and the rise in fuel costs. So it is a risk if fuel costs don't come down sometime next year of cost overruns in the fuel line item for the budget for Fleet, which may necessitate a supplemental appropriation or other cost-saving strategies. So just wanted to point that out there. And there's also a CIP item that came across in the March amendment. This is an existing project for electric vehicle charging stations. The CE is recommending a 6-year a new funding of $15 million, $2.5 million a year over the 6-year period. The first year, FY27, would be funded through motor pool fund balance, and the remaining years would be current revenue, essentially transferred from the general fund, starting in FY28. And this would allow purchasing and installation of approximately 250 electric chargers at county locations. So it's been an ongoing project for the last couple of years. We've previously programmed $4.6 million to date, and this would be another $15 million on top of that. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Director Dice, anything else to add?
Absolutely. Concerned with so a little bit of history. The Ride-On's Veers Mill corridor had an initial schedule, and we had planned for the purchase of hydrogen electric buses to address that that schedule. That project has been delayed for legitimate reasons. We did not want to delay the purchase of the buses because any delay would then put us back in the end of the line for buses, and these buses take up to a year and a half once the order is placed to actually be delivered. So we've kept with the schedule because we'd rather have the buses to operate than have a plan with no buses to run on it. So Mr. Mia is right. We'll have 2 buses delivered this month. By the end of the summer, there about September, we'll have a total of 13 hydrogen electric buses. Anyone who's put a vehicle on blocks and let it sit idle knows that you're basically resurfacing that vehicle from the wheels up once you try and go to use it. These are very expensive buses. They should be used. It gives, by the way, to my left is Calvin Jones, chief of my fleet maintenance management operations and an expert in this area. The preference would certainly be to operate these buses for 2 reasons. Number one, to give Mr. Jones and his staff the experience in operating and maintaining these buses. Our experience with electric buses proves that that is a best practice because it's a different technology, different use, and we need to get to know these vehicles. The other, of course, is the environmental benefit of operating hydrogen electric versus diesel buses. We can introduce those into the fleet, into ride-ons routes in select areas. For the Flash corridor, the plan is to recondition diesel articulated buses. While one bus is pulled out of service or reconditioning, we can introduce a hydrogen electric bus to run that route. So there'll be no diminution of ride-on service along that key strategic route. And while we're also getting the chance to operate vehicles in an environment that they'll ultimately operate in the Veers Mill. These buses arrive with a full tank. A full tank is good for a day. So without a fuel supply, I will have in my stock 13 very large and very expensive paperweights. And it's just not a best practice nor a good use of public resources and funds. So our recommendation would be the executive's recommendation, and that is to anticipate the full and effective use of these vehicles as an introduction of a new strategy that is also in keeping with the county's stated climate goals. So
I appreciate you explaining that. I think we went through something similar 3 years ago when we went through a similar budget, that there were things that were listed for the reconciliation list, but in effect it would have rendered the heavy investments useless. Right. And I think that's the easiest way of putting it. Right. Colleagues, we're okay?
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, this is a conversation, I think this is a global conversation for full council, but we can't invest in capital projects and then not fund them from an operational perspective. And this is exactly the case here. And so I think we need to have a conversation with the council president about how we identify these items. But I can't imagine that we would have a scenario that we wouldn't fund this. And the problem is that the 3 of us are fully aware of the need for this, but when we get into the final budget deliberation, the 3 of us have the information, the rest of the council doesn't. And so I just think it's just, we have to figure this out with the council president about how these specific items are going to be identified.
we're certainly happy to provide any larger briefing that you may desire.
I remember what the situation was 3 years ago. and it was the pink and lime ride-on extras in Gaithersburg. And Director
There you go.
Conklin is nodding. Where the infrastructure, the paint, we
the
enjoyed
paint.
painting, and having had that all set and ready, but then not having, the decision was made as to whether or not to actually have buses operate on that infrastructure. So, yes. Councilmember Stewart.
I'll just say ditto to that, completely agree. And can I ask another question? Okay.
You have the floor.
Great. No, it's a little side note, but Mr. Jones, since we have you here, I was wondering, one of the things you've talked to us in the past is about the apprenticeship program, and just wanted to know, is that still up and running? How's it going?
Yes, Calvin Jones, Division Chief of Fleet Management Services. The apprenticeship program is very alive and well. One of the things that DGS was able to do was to actually get the program registered this past year. So it's actually registered with the state and therefore registered with the Department of Labor, and we were eligible for a grant as a result. So the program has been very successful. We like it. It gives us an opportunity to get folks in younger in their work careers, and especially in a zero emission space when you kind of have to build your own anyway. So it's been a great program. So.
If I may, let me elaborate on that, because the apprenticeship program that's been certified are seeking to implement and will come up in hearing takes place includes not only fleet mechanics but HVAC mechanics, electricians, plumbers, working extensively with Montgomery Schools and Montgomery College. We seek to make this a very robust career path for younger and perhaps second career county residents who want to learn skills. I have a teenager at home who wants to become a certified deep sea diving welder. Who knew? But there are very few in this region opportunities for technical training that moves forward to very beneficial careers and oftentimes small local businesses that pop up. So this apprenticeship program is, in my view, no small link in that chain. So we're very pleased with the success that we've made so far. Now we just need to get it going in
Great.
these other areas.
Well, when you come before government operations, I look forward to hearing it again. And Mr. Jones, I won't forget that it started in Fleet. Don't worry. It all started with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good conversation. So we will support item number 3 without objection. And we'll talk about how this is reflected for our colleagues on the reconciliation list and hopefully not on the reconciliation list. Item number 4 is motor fund pool contribution, and the county executive is recommending a decrease of 97% from the FY26 approved operating budget. Mr. Mia.
Sure. This NDA budgets one-time funds to purchase new vehicles, expand to the fleet, not replacement vehicles, which are done through the fleet budget. So for FY27, CE is recommending $41,200 to purchase one vehicle. This would be supporting an expansion of the mobile crisis team within HHS. Current year, 26 approved funds have purchased vehicles for both 5 vehicles for HHS and 20 vehicles for sheriff. So those have been budgeted in this year's budget. So for next year, it's a relatively modest one vehicle. This is technically a new item, so staff is recommending it be placed on the rec list. If it's not funded, and there is an expansion of the mobile crisis team that is funded, this would mean that there would be lots of vehicles available for that team, so it would have some operational impact possibly unless Fleet and HHS were to manage their existing pool of vehicles. So just to put that risk out there. But other than that, no other comments.
Thank you.
Gary Nalvin, Office of Management and Budget. Just want to underscore something Mr. Mia said, that this new vehicle is specifically tied to a new HHS service. And so we just want to make sure that doesn't get lost in the shuffle of reconciliation. If that new HHS service is funded, then this vehicle should be as well.
Very important point. So another asterisk, but put in a different place, that that HHS item needs to be tied to this. So appreciate you expanding upon that. But I'm comfortable with that arrangement, knowing that they have to go together. Yeah, Councilmember Stewart.
Thanks. This isn't about the budget, but this goes to how we do the packets. And Mr. Mia, this isn't directed to you, but just generally, it seems odd to me when we have one-time funding, we're also calling it a reduction in the budget, because technically if you have one-time funding, it's gone. It's not a reduction the next year. So I just wanted to make that note because I think it's important as we're looking at how we consider our budgets. It's nice to say it at 97% reduction, but in fact, that's not the case because last year we approved a budget that was a one-time funding. So you're all good. So thank you.
Good point. Look forward to talking with HHS committee about what they've done. So thank you. And thank you, DGS. Thank you all. And we will now turn over to MCDOT. Item number 5 is the Department of Transportation parking lot districts, and the county executive recommends an increase of $937,530, or 3.1% increase from the FY26 approved operating budget. Always a lengthy conversation about PLDs, so Mr. Kenny, let's get into it.
Thank you. So there's a summary on page 1 of the staff report. We'll get into each of these items individually, but I'll note up front that $191,000, almost $192,000 of that $937,000 increase mentioned by the chair earlier is related to programmatic and staffing additions that will go on the reconciliation list, so we'll pay special attention to those, while the rest, the $745,000 increase are for compensation and other adjustments that are not put on the reconciliation list. We'll call out a couple other reductions that are contributing to that, but otherwise those broader items again are to be addressed at full council. There are also 4 CIP adjustments transmitted with the operating budget that we'll get into as well. Just some quick background on the parking district services budget. As the chair mentioned, this budget funds the activities of the parking lot districts in Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wheaton. These are non-tax supported funds. These are enterprise funds, so all of the funds you're seeing here, as well as including the increases, are funded by revenues collected by each parking lot district. And we'll get into some of the challenges with that fiscally later, as well as some fund balance policies that are relevant here. Moving to the individual budget increases and reductions, on page 3, table 2 breaks out these reductions into individual line items and buckets. That provides a good overview, but as mentioned earlier, getting into the reconciliation list items that are the net increases. Both of these are split proportionally between the 3 parking lot districts. Each item lists the individual amounts that are going to each of the parking lot districts in terms of cost, but you can think of these as single increases that are split between. So the first is the addition of 1 transportation contract compliance inspector for just shy of $150,000, split between the 3 PLDs. This is an increase to add 1 FTE, 1 position for a contract compliance inspector. This additional position would primarily support coverage gaps on weekends and nights. The impetus behind this is kind of twofold. The first is that the PLDs experienced an increase an expansion of their hours in FY24 to include Saturdays and to end at 10 p.m. or collection hours. In addition, aging infrastructure, elevators, other life-saving systems, life safety systems have led to need for additional coverage on weekend and nights to ensure these systems work and are observed and inspected for maintenance needs. If the council chooses not to fund this increase, these gaps in coverage will persist and may lead to degradation of capital assets and reduction in coverage. And then, unless there's any questions immediately, we can maybe go to the.
If you want.
Okay. No, I just had a question on if we had any data on the number of emergencies that are taking place at this time. What do we have data on, like what is not being responded to right now after hours or yeah?
I don't have it right now with me, but anecdotally we have had more service calls for elevators that go out of service or emergencies that come up that we have to then respond on an overtime basis. So we have seen some of that in our overtime costs, but I don't have the data right now with me. We could start compiling that information.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see what the overtime costs are and just kind of weigh, given the status of the Silver Spring, parking district, and if it's being split between the three, how logistically, how is that going to work?
So all costs are split based on where the service call originates. So if it happens in Silver Spring, the costs are attributed to the Silver Spring PLD. If it's in Bethesda, it goes there.
Council member, just as a clarification, the contract compliance inspector is also ensuring that our vendors are doing what they're supposed to be doing in those hours. Enforcement contractor, the collections contractor, the janitorial contractor, electrical contractor. Not just a matter of emergency, it's the base operations that extend, that the hours of operation and enforcement have been extended to.
Okay. So I just want to go back to, so it'll be charged to each of the individual PLDs as it's being needed and not reflected here as a three-way split? I'm confused, sorry.
Sorry,
Gotcha.
Sorry.
I understand now.
No, the position is split based on, again, each PLD's number of spaces proportionally according to that.
Got it. Thank you.
So I want to just pick up on that thread. So the justification is because of the increased operational time?
That is correct. So service hours have expanded, and we do not have a night shift, like a second shift. So we have a very small, I think, one person that has a second shift at this point. This would add to that capacity. And it also allows us to, like Deputy Director Willanen mentioned, notice things and proactively take care of things before they become an issue when we are not in our primary or peak hours of operation to cause more disruptions to staff, to visitors.
So I want to drill down on that a little bit more. So because of the increased service, which is the increased time that people have to pay the parking meter, that's really what we're talking about?
So,
because I'm just trying to figure out, people are parking all hours of the day, so what is the increased service?
It's an important component of this, that most of the actual direct service in the parking lot districts is delivered by contract resources. So what's happening is those contract resources may not be inspecting their own work or paying attention to their own work during these hours. So enforcement activity, people making sure the pay stations are working and that sort of stuff, that this provides the county oversight for that expanded contract operation that's already happening. So the contract operation hours have expanded when the hours expanded, but the oversight by the county's forces of that contract were not expanded with that. So that's what this provides.
So it's a managerial
field
role
oversight
to ensure that that work is being done.
Yeah, field oversight during the operating hours.
Let me ask another related question. What has the increase in revenue been since we've increased the the service time.
Numbers right now in front of me, but
The question I'm getting at is the $150,000 for basically a compliance officer, right? That a shorthanded way of saying that, a manager, to ensure that the work is getting done. I'm just curious what that does for the revenue, which is why the revenue and service was requested in the first place.
if I had to estimate, it's probably about a 20 to 25% increase in revenue from the prior, before we went up to the Saturday and the 10 p.m. in terms of revenue before and after. So each total revenue is about 30 million. So.
Oh, okay. That's real. I think that is helpful if you can provide that information, and Mr. Kenny can supplement that to ensure that this is something to ensure that there is revenue and the revenue enhancements that we've all agreed to.
Yeah,
I
the
think that
revenue
buffers the case.
The revenue and the customer frustration of not being able to get
Yep.
something working after hours.
Great. Thank you for, no, thank you for wanting to ask that. Mr. Kenny?
Thank you. And we'll follow up with that information. Moving on to the second and final reconciliation list item, and I also neglected to mention earlier. Reconciliation list works is, just for the record, is that these are be added as non-tax supported items separately from the tax supported items, because given that the enterprise funds are pulling from two different sources, so
right, that's fair.
Be tracking these separately. Second item is a $42,000 increase to procure and maintain an additional maintenance vehicle for the PLD fleet. Again, the cost of this will be split between the three PLDs. The PLDs currently rent a vehicle for use by one of their maintenance managers. These rental costs are not funded as a line item in the PLD budgets and are being absorbed at the expense of deferring other maintenance activities. So this new vehicle would help the PLDs reduce the annual fees associated from renting this vehicle.
And this around the PLDs?
That's correct, for staff to respond, to provide oversight of any contract staff.
Councilman Balcom.
Thank you. So is there a corresponding reduction for the rent of the vehicle that's currently being used?
The current cost is being absorbed within our budget, so it's not a reduction. The purchase of a vehicle, the cost to purchase it would be much less than the rental, so the impact to our budget will be much lower. But it's not a savings per se.
Okay. But it's being, it is a savings, it's just being allocated someplace else.
It's better use of the funds for the purpose for which they're ostensibly being provided.
Okay, thank you.
Not
Good
to,
question. I'm thinking.
yeah, no, I know, not to get into like the nitty gritty of like a $42,000 and the purchase of a, but I'm just curious, and I don't know how our managers do it now, but was there any look at reimbursing for mileage versus us purchasing a vehicle?
So we generally don't do that because of
Okay.
the liability issues that are associated with it. So an occasional drive to a meeting, but a full-time need for a position to have a vehicle, that's putting the county in a bad situation.
Yeah. And they are going back and forth now, the managers.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
occasional business use of a personal, but we shouldn't do it 100% of the time.
Great, that's helpful, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Without any objection, we'll move that forward.
Thank you. Now moving on to the executive recommended reductions. First, we'll call out the elimination of the urban district transfers. These are not reflected as budget items in the PLD budget, but are instead reflected as within the PLD fiscal plans on circle pages 10 through 12. It has been a longstanding practice for as we've talked, as this committee has talked about it in previous budgets, for the PLDs to transfer a portion of their revenue to their associated urban districts. So the Bethesda PLD to the Bethesda Urban District, et cetera. These transfers in the FY26 budget are listed on page 4 of the staff report. For Bethesda, it's about a little shy of 1.6 million. For Silver Spring PLD, it's 150,000, and for Wheaton PLD, it's 225,000. These reductions have been decreased by the council in previous years to address the affordability concerns for each of the PLDs and promote their fiscal health. And so the executive's recommendation reflects a continuation of that practice and ending the practice of transferring funds from the PLDs to the urban districts. In terms of setting this kind of within the context of each of the urban districts, this citing the fiscal plans on pages circle pages 10 through 12. This item gets the Silver Spring PLD to have just over a 0% fund balance, a 0.4% fund balance. So we're working on really tight margins for the Silver Spring PLD, and actually looking at a negative fund balance going into FY28, so there will likely need to be additional decisions made in the future. And it gets us to about an 11% fund balance for the Bethesda PLD, and gets us to a 124% fund balance for the Wheaton PLD. The latter of those obviously stands out as much higher than the 25% fund balance that's required by policy. However, this was done both to have a uniform, by the executive, to both have a uniform approach to each of the parking lot districts, as well as to grant some flexibility and a buffer for the Wheaton parking lot district in FY27 when they're planning collection structure and pricing system that we'll get into in the next agenda item. So there is some flexibility within the Wheaton PLD, given that you're looking at an above 100% fund balance. But in terms of, this is a policy decision and one that's kind of playing it safe and using a cautious approach given the changes to the Wheaton PLD. I will also note that the Economic Development Committee will have a work session next week on the urban districts and discuss the impacts there. But I'll note briefly that these reductions in transfers to the urban districts are being replaced with general fund dollars on the urban district side to maintain essentially a continuity of service for them. So to kind of give the big picture of the impact here. And I'll just note the second reduction as well, because it is related, is on the top of page 5 of the staff report, the elimination of charges for 3 urban district positions for 3 FTEs. Currently, the Silver Spring PLD is paying for 3 positions within the urban district. This would eliminate that as well and kind of provide a final, severance of the PLD budget from the urban district budget, as this is one sort of remaining connection. So essentially reduce a total reduction of $450,000 in the transfer from the Silver Spring PLD to the Silver Spring Urban District.
Director Conklin, we've been at this rodeo a few times, and the fund balances are not in the best of shape.
That's absolutely correct. And of course, as you just heard, they vary across the 3 parking lot districts. But that larger fund balance percentage in Wheaton is on a much smaller base of a fund than in the other. So it's a little bit misleading to think that it's a really large reserve. It's not a really large reserve, but when you're comparing it to a smaller base, it appears so. This budget is intended to keep the parking lot districts solvent and to formally, as Mr. Kenny mentioned, formally end the notion of the cross subsidy from parking to urban district, which has not really been sustainable for quite a while. It was a more robust practice when there was a parking lot ad valorem tax that was sunsetted a decade or so ago. The fund balance has continued to lose strength over a period of time, but stayed solvent with rate increases and relatively consistent demand. Then we had 2020, 2021, 2022, where parking demand was much lower during pandemic and in pandemic recovery. We've started to see that demand recover, but not in the same patterns and not generating the same revenue as it once did. So you'll see the fiscal health of the Bethesda PLD is becoming more stable than we had seen in past years. The Wheaton PLD is stable. A large reason for that is because county agencies are paying for parking in the Wheaton PLD. So it's a very firm set of demand for the Wheaton PLD. And the Silver Spring PLD is a very large inventory and has not seen the demand or utilization recover and is continuing to struggle and has some of the older facilities and more maintenance needs. So it continues to be a challenging set of operating circumstances. This appears to be the best way to keep the PLDs healthy through this time, but we are assessing longer term strategies in terms of the scale of the parking lot districts, whether they're oversized for parking demand. And there has to be a market to take that property off the PLD's hands. And there's some timing and development related concerns that might allow us to, in the longer term, pivot some of the less utilized, poor condition facilities to other uses that would improve the outlook here. But for now, we're trying to keep them all solvent. And Silver Spring, as Councilmember Stewart mentioned in her discussion, is the most challenged in terms of those, and also had some of the largest urban district demands in terms of the transfers.
Well, Councilmember Balcom and I will participate in that conversation at the Economic Development Committee, but I'll turn it over to the district council member to talk about her PLD.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the other context for Silver Spring is Purple Line construction. I mean, we've been hit hard in the downtown area. COVID, we did have some public safety concerns that kept people from our garages. I think we've addressed those through a lot of work with our businesses, our red shirts, putting in, improving some of the infrastructure. Construction that basically shut down part of downtown Silver Spring over a summer. And so I think that's the context. And as we're looking at that PLD, hopefully, as we see the Purple Line come back, that construction, and we're looking at other things in the downtown area, I hope people take public transit there. That is our goal. But I'm optimistic that a lot of what we are seeing is a confluence of circumstances that have really, honestly, devastated that downtown area in terms of people's ability to get around, and for many of our businesses. And so I think it's important to add that to the context when we talk about the health of the PLD, because I do think it has really, we've seen it impact our businesses, and if it's impacting our businesses, that means people aren't coming. And so that means they're not parking.
And the executive in his recommendation didn't want to compound those challenges with a parking rate increase in this proposal.
Thank you.
I'm glad you didn't. Councilmember Balcom.
So we'll have a chance to talk about the impact of on the urban district, I guess next week when we come to the urban districts. And I fully understand the reasons why you're doing this in terms of eliminating the transferred parking lot districts, because we've talked, since I've been here about the trouble of the parking lot districts, the parking lots themselves, and the significant, when the parking garages were new, this was great and it was a cash cow, but it's not anymore. But I do have to say that when the urban districts were initially established, they were to be self-funded from a tax, from the district tax, as well as the PLD transfers. And that, so we continue to go further away from that, which is, if that's what the body decides in terms of supporting the Silver Spring, Bethesda, and Wheaton. But it continues to erode the argument of why other areas in the county don't get general fund funding to support some of the urban district activities. It's not for you all. I just need to say that because I'll say it again next week. So, thank you.
Yes.
Our frustration with the situation, and we'll accept these recommendations without objection. So if you want to go into the CIP.
Thank you. So there are 4 CIP adjustments that were transferred by the executive along with the operating budget. I will note that council staff has worked on a revised staff report to add some additional context that I will add verbally here. This information has been shared with the committee and will be posted public record tomorrow. So apologies. But going through those items, the first of the projects is the Facility Planning Parking Silver Spring Parking District. The executive recommends eliminating $90,000 in FY27 funding for this project, as deferred funds are sufficient to meet planned activities. Feel free to jump in with questions as I go, but I'll otherwise proceed through these 4 before pausing. For the Bethesda Parking Bethesda facility renovations project, the executive recommends an $895,000 increase in Bethesda PLD current revenue funding for this project to support gate and payment system enhancements at Garage 31. This is one of the items where we've included more, or we're looking to include more information, more context. So I'll mention that here, that Garage 31, this is the Capitol Crescent Garage, the only remaining garage in Bethesda that still uses a gate-based parking system. This committee reviewed this item and approved a small budget increase to support the ongoing compatibility of this gate-based payment system with the software and back-end systems of the Bethesda PLD. This $895,000 increase is meant to be a more substantial upgrade to that system to retain the gate in the current payment system, but allow better integration with app-based systems, Park Mobile, and more easily allow for a future transition to a gateless system to better match the other garages in Bethesda.
Questions or without any objection?
Thank you. Moving on to the Parking Silver Spring facility renovations. The executive recommends a cost adjustment for this project due to a revised funding schedule for FY27 through FY30, resulting in a net $276,000 decrease. I will add that this is an affordability decrease for the Silver Spring parking lot district, given the fiscal situation that we talked about earlier. So this is a small decrease, about a 1.1% decrease in the sort of ongoing maintenance activities in this level of effort project, to defer some general maintenance to preserve affordability for the Silver Spring PLD.
You used the term, so it's deferred maintenance, not
deferred
cost
maintenance.
savings necessarily, so.
As Mr. Kenny said, it's relatively small. The overall budget is around $20 million over less than 1% reduction, and it's to keep the fund balance above zero.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just, how do I want to say it? Like, I'm trying to figure out, like, earlier we talked about adding this position, right, to make sure that the contractors were doing, I kind of feel like it's this, and this is a small amount, though, is making sure that we're keeping up with the maintenance. because it's, if we don't, we know people won't come. So that was the justification before, right, to having the FTE. And now we're talking about, because we have an affordability issue, reducing the maintenance. And I'm glad it is just a small part. But I did just want to note the little incongruent, whatever the word is, there, because if on the one hand we're saying, okay, we need to have this person to make sure we're doing this, I just want to make sure, you know, that we're, especially for the Silver Spring area, that they're so heavily used. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that Wheaton and Bethesda aren't. Downtown Silver Spring is different from Wheaton and Bethesda. The opportunities we have there, and we know the challenges. And so I just kind of I needed to say we're thinking about really maintaining this asset.
I completely understand the optics of that, but that one position at $140,000, a third or so is ascribed to this, and it does create more eyes on the situation in terms of the maintenance that is being done. And that probably offsets any negative impact from the very small change in the renovation funds that are available. And the regular maintenance activities, the cleaning and security related are all in the operating component where that other position is added. So these are the more significant longer term repairs that have that very small change in their budget.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you for sharing that. Different moving parts and figuring out how they work with each other or against each other is an extremely important point. Last item on the CIP list.
Yes, thank you. So the parking Wheaton facilities renovation project, the executive is recommending a $400,000 increase for this project to support elevator tower renovations in Garage 45 in Wheaton.
Okay, without objection.
Thank you. Some additional detail on the fund balance policies, which we went through earlier. And then finally, Table 3 on page 6 of the staff report summarizes the committee decision points. And unless there's anything to add, I believe we've gone through each of those.
I think we had good conversation on these items. So without any objection, the committee recommendations for this budget item.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kenny. And one last item on the agenda today, and that is item number 6, transportation fees, charges, and fares. And Mr. Kenny, walk us through that.
Thank you. So this is an annual resolution that sets the fees, charges, and fares across the Department of Transportation's portfolio. There's some background on the legal basis and a summary on the first page. Jump to page 3 and just start going through the changes from last year's resolution, kind of line by line here. So I'll pause briefly after each if there are questions or comments, and then there can be, I suppose, a committee or, review of the changes in total at the end. So the first is the creation of a $75 fine for driving, standing, or parking in a bus lane. This fine is set pursuant to authority granted by the county to the county by the state during the 2025 legislative session to monitor and assess fines up to $75 for obstructing bus lanes. This fine is in line with the state authority up to $75. MCDOT has actually already been assessing this fine as a part of a pilot program over the past year for bus lane monitoring and enforcement. And the executive's recommendation reflects a proposal to codify this fine and essentially make the program permanent.
Thank you. And so, Director Conklin, how do we define this purpose?
They're marked or signed. They don't necessarily need to have red paint, but they need to be designated by traffic control devices as a bus lane. All the bus lanes that we have in place in the county, which we have quite a lot at this point, we have over 20 miles of bus lanes, are signed and marked in a way that would allow enforcement of this.
And those are automated cameras that
the intention
detect?
is for them to be automated cameras. We are still working through some technological adjustments for conformance of that system with privacy requirements. So we are not using automated enforcement at this moment until that's complete, but manual enforcement is still possible for issuing these fines.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. The budget and authority required to collaborate with WMATA and other partners to have the back end of this work.
Absolutely. And again, we requested state authorization to do this, and they granted it to us. So without objection.
Thank you. So the following change is the creation of a new permit, the controlled zone permit, which is called a CZ permit in the resolution, would be set with rates of $205 per space per month for the Bethesda PLD and then $140 for the Silver Spring and Wheaton PLDs. These permits would be available to employers seeking to reserve 75 or more spaces in a given PLD facility for use by their employees. Essentially, this would block off. This would give the employees of a particular employer the ability to park in a set of blocked off spots, which would be reserved until 11 a.m. On weekdays. If employers choose to utilize this program, it could be a source of more steady fee revenue for the PLDs and help stabilize those enterprise funds. However, without any employers having signed up already, because this program does not exist yet, any new revenue from this is not reflected in the fiscal plans that we reviewed in the last agenda item.
If we approve it, will they come?
They're waiting to come.
They're waiting to come.
This is being implemented by large employers in our CBDs to have more reliable communication tools for their workforce about availability of parking in the downtown areas. It doesn't really change. It's not reserved per se. 6 CZ permit purchasers in downtown Bethesda. Any one of them could use any CZ space. So it's not a one-to-one assignment or lease or disposition of parking to an individual employer, but it is providing sort of the first option to use certain spaces for people who have these permits.
Well, thank you. I know we've talked a lot about this type of thing, and I'm just curious if once we get for the large employers, if we could look at some ways to work with some of our smaller businesses, because I do think, as we've talked about in the past, there are some of our smaller businesses who would like to avail themselves of some type of program like this. Yeah.
Yes, we've talked about this in other circumstances before. So in addition to this, you're going to be seeing coming from the department a new set of communication tools about how businesses can make easier access of parking and parking tools we have available for them, and some other guidance for parking customers on how to avoid getting in trouble in the parking facilities in terms of fines or other, and the payment systems and things like that. So hopefully that will help. And if this is successful, we can look to adjust the thresholds for which the size of the employer is defined. But at the moment, we wanted to get our legs under us with this and make sure we weren't creating operational or demand problems in certain garages.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, we've talked about this before. I think, especially in the downtown Silver Spring area, we have a lot of folks who are working who use the metered spots because they feel like it's more convenient instead of parking in the parking garages. But in fact, if we incentivize them to be in the parking garages, that actually frees up the on-street parking, which is actually better for people who are just running in and out of stores, and improves our whole downtown area. So, yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I think this is great. About So it's not a one-to-one, people don't have a parking place, but I'm assuming you're not overselling the spaces?
We probably will. We oversell every parking facility, these parking facilities in the Rockville core are oversold. But you monitor that oversell rate to make sure you're not creating inavailability of a spot.
Right, that's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
particularly because these are employees, and so they're more reliant than customers parking. So I just want to make sure
Yes.
that we're not
So the rule of thumb, we typically think 80% of a typical permit holder type might show up on any day, and then you don't oversell all the way to that threshold to begin with, but you see what it actually looks
Okay.
like.
Great, thanks.
And then manage it from there.
Great.
Great. Let's keep going.
Thank you. Moving on to electric vehicle charging fees. The executive recommends a fee of 50 cents or less per kilowatt hour for electric vehicle charging in PLD facilities. MCDOT has communicated that they intend to per kilowatt hour for fast charging stations, and 35 cents for level 2 charging stations that take a few hours. Currently, the charge for EV charging in PLD facilities is about 17 cents per kilowatt hour. This reflects just the cost of the electricity provided. The executive is recommending a higher fee amount to help reflect the costs that PLDs have incurred by installing and maintaining these chargers, although the exact rate is not set by any metric of trying to recoup any certain level of cost, but is rather set as to be competitive with other jurisdictions are charging on average around the state of Maryland.
Without objection.
Thank you. Moving on to Wheaton PLD fee collection changes. I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the Wheaton PLD fund balance, but the executive is making the following changes to the Wheaton PLD fee structure. The first is to end collection of parking fees at 6 p.m. rather than 10 p.m. On weekdays, so parking will be free after 6 p.m. To no longer collect parking fees on Saturdays, and kind of on the back end in concert with that, to increase hourly rates for street parking from $1.25 to $2.50 for street parking lots, from $1 to $2 for apologies. This is I believe for street. 25 to 250. Surface parking lots is increased from $1 to $2, and for garage parking, an increase of $1 to $1.75. This is meant to offset the revenue change from the change in collection schedules to be a net zero to Wheaton PLD revenue. This was done per the request of the Wheaton business community, and particularly from a letter from the Wheaton Urban District Advisory Committee, WUDAC, which is included in the staff report on circle pages 12 through 13. There's some additional details on the exact fiscal impact, but it's essentially a wash.
I remember there was lots of consternation a number of years ago when we increased the fees in Wheaton, and it's an adjustment, and so we're still trying to figure this out, and appreciate WUDAC's engagement and their suggestions here.
So you guys got me a little hot water here. I'm just going to say, because when we, a few years ago, started having to pay for parking in downtown Silver Spring on Saturday, I said to my constituents and the business community there, we're doing it for consistency. I heard from you all, we want consistency across the PLDs. So that wasn't that long ago. And in addition to that, we've had our local chamber and other folks asking for changes, and my response was we wanted consistency. And so if it's an option to think about changes, and I know that PLD in Silver Spring is in a different financial place than Wheaton. You need to help me out now, because the folks in Silver Spring are looking at this proposal, particularly our business community, and saying, well, wait a minute, we had actually need help.
We don't have any problem with engaging with the community to see if there's a parallel set of adjustments that could be made in Silver Spring. The key is that they end up being revenue neutral and have the buy-in of the community that they're in. We just talked about the fund balance situation in Silver Spring, so there can't be any revenue loss associated with it. But if we look at the way the rates and hours are set, and there's another way to make that sauce that makes more sense to the community, we have absolutely no problem doing that. We have met with the chamber and others and made other smaller scale adjustments to parking provisions in Silver Spring to try to encourage that business activity and try to decrease the threat of getting a $45 ticket when you've stayed at a business too long in the evening and things like that. So Mr. Tamana has done this with Wheaton. We'd be happy to do this with Silver Spring as well.
All right, well, as soon as we're done with the budget.
It would be up to the council, but if there's a reason to revisit this with a different program mid-year, that's a possibility.
Great. Absolutely. All right. Got your commitment. I appreciate it. I'm glad for the flexibility, and glad this is moving forward in Wheaton. Thank you.
Good conversation. Again, we're trying to figure this all out. And just like the flexibility with the previous permit, right? The controlled zone permit, I think this is always an evolution.
Yes, thank you. So, I understand that the WUDAC instituted or initiated this, and so they're fine with the because they wanted to change the parking hours and free Saturdays. It's a large increase, and so I'm wondering, what does the rest of the community think about it? Because it's going to be, you've got, maybe 10 people asking for the change, but then you're going to have a whole community that's going to experience the change.
The Regional Service Center did conduct a survey to inform this as well that was beyond the advisory committee members. So there was a broader outreach effort in Silver Spring that was organized by that RSC. There are challenges with the way it is now, and there will be challenges with this. We would not have done this were it not for that process, because the original rate schedule was put in to address problems that were occurring with residential parkers consuming all of the spaces for businesses. And we may see that re-merge and then look to go back to the way this rate schedule is. But it wasn't just based on the sole input of the advisory committee alone.
All right, thank you.
Council member, we had transmitted, I guess council staff included the letter. There was also the survey results that they had, I think, that were sent over. So Stephen maybe revised the packet for the record to include that information. I just have several pages. Do you have the full packet? And it's there? No.
Yeah, thank you. I think my point was that I just wanted to make sure that it just wasn't a request and from the CAB or WUDAC, the advisory committee.
Yeah, that document details the amount of outreach and how many people responded to each of the options that they had proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was really a long discussion over multiple months with the committee and residents about different options, really, what we could do, what we couldn't do, the financial constraints that we had within the PLD. And, I give the community a lot of credit for understanding all the details of how a PLD works, because it takes a lot to get into the weeds and understand all of that. And they understood that if they're going to take something, they do need to give something. And that's where, finally they all coalesced with this option, but we provided them with other options that they hadn't asked for, that could keep the rates and reduce the impacts on the weekends and evenings, but they chose this instead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, continuity, flexibility, trying to achieve both at the same time. Colleagues, I have a hard stop at a minute ago, so if we could just try to get through. Hopefully, these are non-controversial.
And I apologize. I think I missed the survey results when those were sent around. I'll make sure those are shared. This option was the top chosen option. I'm looking at it
Please
now.
do share that.
But I will share that around. The two more or three more brief items. The first is a $60 fine for stopping, standing, or parking in a bikeway pursuant to Bill 2825, which the council passed in November.
Without objection.
Next is the residential permit parking hearing fee. This reflects the addition of a $250 hearing fee for the residential permit parking program. This program has for a long time has had this $250 fee, but it was reflected in regulation rather than in code, which this resolution, it kind of exists in code. Executive Regulation 2313, which was approved by this committee and then the council in October of 2023, moved the fee amount from regulation into code. This is a delayed implementation of that change.
Okay. Without objection.
And then finally, the elimination of all transportation management district fees, also known as transportation demand management fees, removed from this resolution pursuant to Bill 2425, passed earlier this year.
You want to say without objection?
Without objection.
There. Great. Very good conversation across the board. Appreciate your continued work. And with that, committee is adjourned.
Thank you to the committee.
We will continue to monitor transportation conditions throughout the day.